had a really hard time when I wrote the epilogue in actually giving it to my editor. I didn't want to write it because I didn't want to insert myself anymore into the book already. I already felt like I put so much of myself in it, and what a sort of self-centered, actressy, narcissistic thing to do, to then be like, here's how I felt once more about writing all these poems. My book is called Dark Sparkler, and it is a poetry and art book that explores the lives and deaths of mostly child star actresses, but also any actress that died sort of before their time. I really studied women under the age of 40. It was a very interesting 6-year journey for me writing it because I grew up as a child actress and I still act, but it was a really intense experience. I've been writing since I was 12, and Dark Sparkler was my third collection of poetry. So the book itself, in its inception, was an accident, a complete and utter accident. I had written a poem for Brittany Murphy, and then it was really a couple poet friends of mine, this poet Rachel McKibbins and the author Roxane Gay, that said, they were very, very supportive of the poems in there, and they said, this is going to be the next book you have to write, is studying your dead peers, but ultimately what it's like growing up for a living as an object in a business that can be very superficial and can be very cruel towards women in specific. I think all of the women in this book, whether they were the most famous like Marilyn Monroe, or whether they were someone like Quentin Dean, who no one knows who that is, I think all of them perhaps never got to even figure out how to ask the question of what was it that they wanted to be outside of just being, again, an object, belonging to the public. And the only way to do that is to completely expose yourself and to almost try to come clean about the experience of being in the Hollywood business and the privilege of that. I can't speak for them. I can't say that they didn't think about it. But I can say that their lives got stuck somehow, and they got pigeonholed into these existences that then sort of perpetuated whatever habits, whether it was drugs or eating disorders or getting into really unhealthy relationships with people who eventually killed them. These seem to be the common themes that kept going through their lives. I wanted to get as much information about the actresses and their deaths, everything I could, and then just let the poet in me figure out what the poem was going to be, And sometimes it was from, like the Peg Entwistle piece. She was a woman who famously threw herself from the Hollywood sign in the 1920s off the H. And then just thinking about how to approach that, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be super weird if I just went from the perspective of her shoes, talking her into walking up the hill? Like, it was all her shoes doing, just walking up this mountain. So each one came very differently, and once I absorbed all the information and all the journalistic research stuff, that's when I was able to get quiet and really hear what I thought the voice should be. And sometimes the voice was mine. Those were the hard ones to write.
I mean, they're amazing illustrations. I really like the Marcel stuff.
Yeah, I love that piece.
Yeah. And were they commissioned specifically for the book?
Yeah, they were commissioned specifically for the book. I had sent poems that I thought would speak to specific artists, and then they sent me pieces. And really, the only person that did not like the piece that I thought would fit him was David Lynch. So I had sent him the Sharon Tate piece, which is one of the more gruesome poems from the perspective of her unborn child during the murder. But I also felt, in a morbid sense, that was really the only non-taboo way of coming at that very taboo subject matter. And also would be the least painful because of the innocence of that state and the innocence of not knowing exactly what's going on, while we as adults totally know. And I also just thought, writing about their internal lives, wouldn't it be cool to actually talk about the internal life of Sharon Tate, of what was going on? But it was very, you've done well when you've upset David Lynch.